So, welcome, folks, to another Digital Transformation Lab podcast. Today, we're doing a podcast on customer success, and I am delighted to welcome Sean Elder, who is the VP for Global Customer Success with cybersecurity firm Keeper Security. Sean, fantastic to have you here today. Really nice to see you again.
Thank you. Welcome. I appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. So I guess, Sean, the first thing I ask everybody is maybe if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your career and anything you'd like to share about yourself personally as well. If you'd like, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started my sales career a long time ago now, and basically walking the streets of New York City right after 9/11 selling payroll.
Wow.
And then that's kind of where I cut my teeth, right? And learned rejection very quick. The New
Right.
Yorkers aren't always the kindest people in the world, but I love them because
Yeah.
they're very blunt.
Yeah.
But from there, I kind of, grew into an enterprise selling role with a bunch of different SaaS solutions in different industries like HR, finance, and now in cyber.
Yeah.
But you asked a little bit about my personal life too. I think the best thing that ever happened to me in my career was starting my family. And it's
Wow.
interesting how that correlates. But when I look at what I kind of refer to myself as like a team builder, right? I really thrive in building teams within organizations. And that's kind of how you start to build your family, right? And you treat them the same in a lot of ways. You want to be relatable to your children. You want to be welcoming to them, open door policy, understanding. But you also want to always like elevate and inspire them to be different and do great things. And I think
Yeah.
once I learned that as a parent, I was able to put a lot of that into my career, and it really helped me grow teams and create long-lasting relationships.
Yeah. Well, I can so relate to that. I've a second teenager. She's going to be 13 coming into the family
Oh
in
man,
a couple of weeks, and they're testing every parenting skill, or maybe highlighting that I'm
yeah,
lacking a
right.
few.
No, that's
But
cool.
Sean, like, can you tell us a little bit about? I hear customer success, and it's kind of used interchangeably with customer support and sometimes customer experience. Can you tell us about what customer success means to you?
Yeah, I think Daria, you hit it on the head. Like if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different responses on what customer success actually is.
Yeah.
But I think the general idea is it's a proactive way for a company to identify gaps with their clients, right? Whether it's in onboarding or usage or even the client tech infrastructure they're using,
Mm.
and working side by side with the client to solve those issues.
Yeah.
The role's set up to improve like retention and increase awareness
Yeah.
of the other solutions that our company may be able to provide a client that they don't know we have.
Yeah.
When I look at it, I kind of consider CS as like the glue, right? It takes sales and support and even marketing and puts them all together so that we can talk to our clients about what's coming down the line with Keeper or industry stuff,
Yeah.
or we can handle support tickets that are simple that don't overwhelm our support team.
Yeah.
And we're also obviously always looking for that way to upsell or expand a client's revenue stream with us.
Yeah.
So when I look at CS, I look at it as the glue
Yeah.
and how we keep retention as well as build revenue with a finite set of clients.
That makes a lot of sense. And Sean, where do you think, like, who owns customer success within the organization? Who's
Yeah,
responsible?
it's a great question. I've seen it. I've seen it sit under support. I've seen it sit under sales, and sometimes
Yeah.
even marketing. I think the
Yeah.
beauty of it is usually it sits under the CRO, right, the Chief
Mm.
Revenue Officer, and from there, I like to have that direct line to the CRO because I think
Yeah.
if support, marketing, and sales all sit under that person,
Yeah.
we should be almost that fourth category um, of direct line to the chief revenue officer because we're managing our clients. That's our bread and butter. That's who's already paying us.
Yeah.
And then if we
Yeah.
can get more money out of them and expand that piece,
Yeah.
it's like the whipped cream on top, right? It's
Yeah.
It's the money that we can get from a subset of clients we already have versus going out and finding new business. So I think it should truly sit under that CRO level and be that high up on the priority chain.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, it sounds like, as you're saying, you're kind of you're able to generate more revenue through your customer success activities. So, that would be a natural home for it.
Yeah, and I think what's secondary to that is, I see a lot of companies put it under that sales leader, under that CRO, right? And it kind of gets buried down there. And I think those are the companies that may just not actually be ready to build a customer success org the right way. If they don't see it as a top line priority, along with marketing, support, and sales, it's not something you want to bury because it's the people that are already paying.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's an interesting concept, and again, it just makes sense. One of the things, I guess, I'm probably sensitive to customer success and everything that's out there on it, but it seems to me like in the last couple of years, and even in the last few months, customer success is just exploding. It is just everywhere. Every second LinkedIn post seems to be about it. Job sites, seems to be, they're looking for CSM roles, they're looking for directors, VPs, head of customer success, the rest of it. Why is there a reason we're seeing that now? It seems to be so prevalent. Is there?
Yeah, you must be looking at the Keeper job board.
Yeah.
We're growing so fast, and you're right. You're seeing a lot of job posts across all the software organizations for customer success leaders.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of a new thing too. And then, building teams underneath them. Everybody's building this side of the business.
Yeah.
I think if you look at it, and you mentioned like even a couple months ago, but if we look back farther than that, like 10, 15 years ago, sales and marketing could fuel growth on their own.
Yeah.
Right. That was all you needed for an annual contract. But now there's so much saturation in the software market right now, and so many different options for a buyer on anything they want to bring in, whether it's a CRM or a CSM CRM or a marketing product or whatever. There's so many options, right?
Yeah.
So retention becomes a really big thing for organizations and customer and client experience. And the people that are retaining their client year after year are giving the client the best experience, best in class, from the initial onboarding through to the renewal. And I look at sales in general as this bow tie, and everything that happens on the front end of the bow tie is that discovery and evaluation, pre-sales stuff. But after the knot, it's all customer success. It's how do we onboard them? How do we maintain and retain them? And how do we grow that revenue stream within each client so that they renew, and we can do that year after year after year. And so I think it's so prevalent because of the saturation of the software market.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's like it's almost you kind of have to have it. You're at a competitive disadvantage without it.
You really are, right? I mean, and that's why you see all those postings, they're all the software companies, right, that are scrambling to build this thing up because they're probably looking at their retention scores and their churn and saying, why are we losing clients here? Well, because 10 years ago, there was only one competitor and now there's 15.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And Sean, can you tell me what's your experience? How are you seeing companies manage customer success today?
Yeah, I think, like we've been talking about, it's a huge buzzword. And I've seen companies manage it two different ways. And I don't think one's right or wrong. I think it's a matter of identifying the gaps in your business from initial sale through retention and then fixing those. And how you fix those is how you create the comp plans for the CS team, right? So one way I've seen it is building it around retention and measuring their CSMs on net promoter scores or churn rates or those types of things, right? And that leans more towards the support side of the business, right? And making sure that the client's supported, feels good, the utilization's there. Yeah. But there's this other side of CS that companies are building out where it's more on expansion metrics.
Right.
And, putting quota on CSMs, not necessarily on their retention, but on what expansion numbers they can bring in on an annual basis. And And then obviously tracking the KPIs related to utilization and engagement.
Yeah.
But there's two different ways to measure it, right? If you're looking at Net Promoter Score and churn, or are you looking at how we grow our client revenue stream? I don't know that one's right or wrong. I think it really is a matter of what the gap or what the crack in your, current plan is, how you build that out.
And
for us, we built out a team of hunters that I've taught to be account managers. Wow. And that's been successful for us, but retention isn't a massive concern for us right now. We try to do things the right way and our retention scores are pretty good.
Yeah.
But a client that has seen that as an issue will build out their comp plans much different.
So is that like you'd have your kind of account team would maybe be bringing the new clients in, you can get a CS on board and they'd be focused on cross-sell and upsell and kind of bringing more in. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it, right? So, the businesses that I've seen it where they've rolled out a CSM team, like we talked about, too quickly, just to have a CS team, and it doesn't really scale well. But I've also seen the other side where we build out and compensate on upsell, cross-sell, and true expansion. And if the gaps are right and we're closing those gaps, it can be really successful.
Yeah. And actually, it's an interesting one there, talking about kind of building out that team too quickly. What are the kind of biggest mistakes that you're seeing companies make when they're embarking on this kind of CS journey or CS strategy?
I think the one I've seen made the most, that at least in my world, I don't align with, on the way we, the companies I've worked for have built them out, is creating support teams that try and identify opportunities for sales. I think it's easier to do it the other way. I think it's easier to create a sales team, right? This is, in my opinion, customer success is an extension or an arm of the sales team, not the support team as much, right? You have to be able to support your client and do some of the simple support related issues in order to not overwhelm the support team. But to me, it's sales first, and being a consultative seller. Or a relationship seller, versus bringing in a support team and trying to teach them how to do discovery and to be relatable and be that advisor for the client. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. Okay. And what are the, in that vein again, I think, what do you think are the biggest challenges
in customer success?
Yeah, I guess when you're starting out in the journey, what are the kind of biggest challenges you're seeing customers coming up against?
Yeah, I think it's
companies going up against. Sorry, Sean.
No, that's all right. I think there's a couple things. That some of the challenges are process, right? You can't just throw together a CS team and say, hey, just go make our clients happy, right? There has to be process. And what I mean by process is there has to be a plan from minute one a client is closed won in whatever CRM you're using, to the last minute 365 days later when they renew. There has to be a plan, and how you're going to onboard them and kick it off on the right foot, right? What's the transition from sales to CS? How does that happen? Is that an email? Is that a phone call? Is that a kickoff call together? What happens in that first 30, 60, 90 days? And then how do you maintain contact for the rest of the contract without being an annoying sales guy? But adding value and ensuring that the renewal is going to happen, 30 days out. And, what I've seen very successful is, quarterly business reviews, where you're adding in your product roadmap and you're talking about industry happenings, right? What are the latest breaches or ransoms that have occurred, and how that affected those organizations truly helps you identify, and your client, what their needs are for the next year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think so. Process is, I think, one of the most important things, and it's hard to build process after you've built the team.
Yeah. And I guess understanding that kind of key up that overall objective and the process that needs to happen in the first place will actually probably help you build out the type of team that you need.
Exactly. Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes back to, like, why do you need CS? You got to figure that part out first. Like, what are we trying to solve by this? And I think,
Yeah.
at its most simplistic form, you got to be asking the why, and then
Yeah.
you ask the how.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And Sean, what do you think? What are the kind of fundamentals for customer success? Like, are there kind of I think about Gainsight and their 10 laws of customer success, and I think they brought out a revised, new, updated 10 laws of customer
Yeah.
success. But what are maybe the 3 to 5 kind of top things for you? What are those top 5 fundamentals in customer success do you think you have to have?
Yeah. I think, I look at customer success kind of like a doctor.
Right.
And if you look at it like a doctor, you got to listen. You got to be a really good listener from start to finish. You got to listen to your patient, your client, and understand what they're going through or where their pain is, right? And then you got to diagnose, right? You got to figure out what they have or what their gaps are. And then
Yeah.
you got to prescribe the solution, right? You have to give them the answers to the test and say, if you do this, we'll solve whatever you're diagnosed with. So,
Yeah.
those are my 3 sort of keys: is listen, diagnose, and prescribe. And
Yeah.
you have to become a resource and advisor to the client.
Yeah.
They have to
It's
trust you, right?
yeah. It's
If you go into the doctor's office, they tell you something and you just take it and you're like, okay, I guess that's what I got. And this is how I'm
yeah.
going to fix it, right? You don't ask questions.
Yeah. I like that. I like it reminds me a little bit of that kind of outcome selling based approach where you're
Exactly.
listening to the customer and getting a better understanding of where they're coming from. Do you think is there kind of a standard set? Is there a standard set of rules, one size fits all, or are there kind of nuanced approaches depending on the business?
I think there's a few standards. Like, you have to have a very strong kickoff and onboarding process. And I think QBRs should be a standard.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a joke, right? Because not every client wants it quarterly, but we call it a QBR no matter how often it happens.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you got to have those meaningful meetings throughout the year to, number one, add value to yourself, to the client, right? But
Yeah.
also to work towards something. If you're not working towards something with your client, you're almost a pest, right?
Yeah.
But in that kickoff call, if you can identify and listen and diagnose what they're trying to solve and what their future plans are,
Yeah.
then that's what you work towards on every meeting.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this trend, right? Where they start bringing to the table, hey, we were actually able to make some progress in this area. Well, great. I'm glad we were able to do that. Now we can focus over here. And by the end of the term, we've closed their gaps. We can elevate them with more licenses or cross-sell them or whatever, and start talking about next year before the renewal even comes up. And then the renewal becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So kind of earlier on, you're listening to the customer, you're demonstrating that you understand where they want to go, what it is they need to achieve with you, and you kind of become a trusted advisor almost as you're going through those
Yeah,
QBR phases.
you have to, right? And
Yeah.
I think, as we continue this conversation, it just becomes more and more relevant to me that this is a lot of sales role, right? This is a lot of sales. These are skill sets that salespeople usually have.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, if you're going to build it, I really think it's important to look at how much sales knowledge do you need versus support knowledge, and find that middle ground of the person that can be relatable and yet can understand and identify gaps.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Can I ask you, Sean, especially with the digital transformation lab, the whole kind of move to digital, and like so many customers I'm talking to are talking about digital transformation, even though I think sometimes customers aren't really sure what exactly that means for them. How do you see technology disrupting customer success?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, for one, technology has amplified the need for customer success.
Yeah.
I mentioned that earlier, right? The saturation of this market of software markets, right? SaaS, all of that. has propelled the need for customer success because it's so competitive. You have to have this extension of your organization to make sure that retention numbers are okay.
Yeah.
And then, if you look at it the other way and how, technology has actually started to be built for customer success. You mentioned Gainsight, Churn Zero, and there's a number of other ones that are actually starting to become really relevant in organizations where you're running it side by side with a sales force because it's so targeted to what the CS team needs, right? From support tickets to, behaviors and usage and utilization and engagement in your product, where you can identify potential churn risk faster and easier than, digging through, a standard CRM that's more focused on, the new business side.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you see, are there kind of key trends? Have you spotted any key trends in this space at the moment? Like that might, I'm just wondering, could we see any significant changes in how teams are structured due to the availability of technology?
I haven't identified that yet, but I would say this. I think absolutely as this role and customer success in general continues to expand at the rate it is, which I feel like it's the fastest growing arm of any business right now. Technology is going to be right there. We know that, right? So what comes next after the creation of these CSM, CRM tools? I'm not sure, but I'm certain there is going to be a lot more technology and disruption in this part of a business. I think for the better. Because the more automation that we can do, and maybe it's just on those lower level accounts that each company has, that we can start to automate a little bit better and allow our CSMs to elevate into the more, not needy clients, but the clients that are more complex and, take up more of our time. I think that technology there would be a great solution as well. And I know that's there almost now.
Yeah, makes sense. It's kind of like it seems to be happening in sales. Well, it seems to be happening everywhere, but I can see it happening in sales and marketing. I remember some of the tools that we were looking at, SalesLoft and Conversica. Conversica was a really cool tool.
I mean, all of those tools, right, are so cool. And we're pretty much the same age. I remember when I started out, it was like Sales Logics and like pick up the phone. Right? And now it's like, I get overwhelmed when I start a new role. It's like, all right, we got SalesLoft, Zoom, Gainsight, Salesforce, HubSpot. It's like, all right, like, what are we doing here? But you're right. I mean, all of them have a place, and all of those technologies make the experience better and a little bit more organized.
Yeah, excellent. Sean, the last question I'd like to ask you is around, when people are looking to start on their customer success journey, or they're looking to improve on the strategy that they have in place already, do you have any kind of hints and tips, or are there best places for people to go to learn and develop?
I mean, you mentioned, GameStop a little bit, but like they have great content. And there's a lot of good books out there written by some of those creators of those softwares right now on, the pillars of customer success. And what it actually means to build those companies. So those are great places to start. You want to dive in and get as much knowledge as you can. But once you get through that and you understand what it is and how to kind of formalize it, I think it's really important to look internal. Like, what are the gaps we're trying to solve? Do we have a retention problem, an expansion problem, a logo problem? What is it? And then how do we, because once you identify that, then you have to identify how we compensate what we would call a customer success manager, right? Are we compensating them to fix a retention problem, an expansion problem? What is that? Because they have to be incentivized to fix your problem. And once you do that, then you can identify who you got to look for. If it's a retention problem, or it's a support related problem, and then we're going to identify a business opportunity and hand it back over to an account manager or something. We got to go with a different resume than if it's, an expansion problem, and we got to go find hunters that can identify and do discovery calls with clients to pull more revenue out of them. Then we got to go find, salespeople and turn them into account manager. So I think it's got to start with knowledge of the space, and then true deep dive with your leaders in your organization to identify why we're doing this. Because I can't just do it to say we have a customer success team to show some board that you're doing it the right way. You got to do it with meaning. And if there's meaning behind it, it'll be successful. And it can be a massive revenue stream for your business.
Yeah. That makes, you know what, it's so simple, but it makes so much sense. Understand.
It's not complex. And, you got to find the right leader, somebody that's a builder, and you got to make sure that RevOps is aligned with that person.
Yeah. That's, do you know what, this question, I know this has just popped into my head now, this question around the actual leader itself. So I hope I don't catch you too much off guard. I hope it's a reasonable question. In terms of the leaders themselves, are you kind of looking for a customer success expert, or is it more someone who is, a good team builder?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the only reason you're not catching me too far off guard is I'm looking for one. So I know exactly what I'm looking for. And it is not based on customer success. It's based on, number one, a builder and a sales leader that can come in, that's managed both sides of the bow tie. So I'm looking for somebody that's managed. I love that, like, inside sales or your front end sales manager style, because it's that aggressive hunter mentality. But I need that second half of the bow tie where it's a compassionate leader too, and the understanding, the relatable to the client, that can get on a phone with a client and talk them off the ledge. But also push them when needed to do things that we need them to do, either to grow the business, or we identify gaps. We have to be, extremely blunt sometimes as well. So I want that full sales cycle manager. But truly, I'm looking for a leader qualities, and I don't necessarily put too much on the back end of it of what they've led. It's more, how do they lead, and would they fit into how we lead?
That's a really cool insight. That's really interesting to know. Sean, this has been a really great conversation. I find when I'm talking with leaders like yourself, I'm learning so much. I often say, I'm always kind of reaching. I'm a ferocious note taker, so I'm always, I have to hold myself back and say, just listen and talk, and maybe do notes later. I beg your pardon. That was absolutely fantastic, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us today.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it, and I would love to do it again if you ever want to set it up.